Hello and welcome to my heart project, the podcast Meditation and Healing. In this episode, I will speak with Budhara about the topic in which way the Vedic astrology can help us to heal. And also Budhara will give an introduction into Vedic astrology. And also this interview will be the beginning of a series of interviews which I will do with Budhara. And so I wish you a lot of fun and a lot of new thoughts and a lot of inspiration. Enjoy it.
Okay, hello Budhara, it's very nice to meet you.
Good morning again.
Yes, and I know that you are an astrologist. And what I am curious of is how can we use astrology for healing? Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah. To answer that question, we're going to have to maybe be a little bit philosophical. And maybe what I should do to start is explain what astrology is, what Vedic astrology is, and how I use it. Vedic astrology comes out of ancient India, out of the Vedic culture. And the Vedic culture, Veda means knowledge. And the whole culture of the Vedic civilization was aimed at encouraging all of the citizens to encourage all the citizens to be the best that they could be, to realize their hidden potential as human beings, and to ultimately realize their full spiritual potential in a stage of perfect enlightenment. So the whole culture was aimed at helping people become self-realized.
Yes.
Okay, so very different from ours. Vedic culture was oriented around the idea of being, recognizing that the most valuable thing you have is you, that the most valuable thing that you have is your spirit or your soul, your inner being. And so everything around the culture was aimed at helping people connect with that, and explore that. Our culture, of course, is very much the opposite in many ways. It's changing now a little bit, and we're starting to recognize the need for cultivating a deeper sense of being. But our culture is more or less organized around the idea of having, possessing material things, nice houses, cars, money, whatever it is that we want to possess. So in understanding the need for identifying ways to achieve our complete self-satisfaction, for ways to become fully who we really are, the Vedic sages created this system of Vedic astrology. And the books behind me, most of the books behind me are all written on that subject. And what they lay out is a kind of a map, a code map for being able to look at people and their inner potential. And they do that by giving us an algebraic language. And the symbols of that algebra are the planets, the signs, the houses, the constellations, and their geometric interrelationship with each other. If I'm saying things that are too complex, let me know and I'll explain it more simply. But basically, you can compare the symbol system of Vedic astrology. You can liken it to the concept of Jung's idea of archetypes.
It's C.G. Young's concept of archetypes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So if you read his book, Man and His Symbols, you get some, it's a good introductory book to his concept of archetypes. And what we do is I could even share my screen and show you maybe how it looks, but that might take a couple minutes for my computer to respond. But what we do is we create a chart, and the chart is based on where the person is born and the time of day he's born and the date that he or she is born.
Yes.
And that gives us a kind of a roadmap, a kind of a chessboard, if you will, where all the planets are located differently. And so we use that chart to analyze different parts of a person's life. So using the chart, we can understand the nature of their personality, how they express themselves into the world, how people tend to see them in the world. We can understand the nature of their relationships. Do they have an easy time with relationships, or are they challenged in their relationships? Do they have an easy time manifesting their personal potential in the world? Some people are just very naturally gifted at doing that.
Yeah.
Other people are challenged in that way. I am going to answer your question about how Vedic astrology can be used for healing, but I'm just getting some context laid out. And so we can look at many different discrete areas of a person's life, their relationship with money, their relationship with their siblings, their relationship with their mother, their father, the kind of house they live in, the kind of creative drive that they have, the challenges that they face in the world, the kind of transformations that they will go through or that they should deserve to go through, their spiritual nature, if they have one, if they're aware of one, their work, their big life goals, and eventually also ultimately the sense of what's next. Because in Vedic astrology, there's the idea that this life is not the only life. This is only one of many, many lifetimes. This is one chapter in a big book of our journey to perfection.
And one question, you said you can look at the spiritual nature if they have one. Does not everybody have this spiritual nature?
Yeah, everybody does have a spiritual nature, but sometimes that spiritual nature is not readily manifest in a person's life. So some people may be antagonistic even to the idea that they have anything to do with spirit. Some people actually walk around thinking that their existence is nothing but, the physical body, a collection of electrochemical impulses in the body, and that they're nothing more than the sum of those electrochemical impulses, right? So that they're born, they live their life, they die, that's it. So you could say, well, yeah, to call them atheists would be maybe one way to say it, but it's not even just atheism, it's humanism, it's different ways of looking at things, let's say. So sometimes our spiritual consciousness is dormant, right? So, and that's why I say if they have one.
Yes.
Right. Everybody latently has one. And of course, that's the whole point I'm making, that Vedic astrology and Vedic culture points to that, that truth, that fundamental truth that we're spiritual beings having a material experience. Our physical body is not what we really are. And we can experience that in our own lives. If you're old enough to live through different stages of life, you recognize that, as a child or a young man, you had one type of body. As you get a bit older, you have a different type of body. When you get to my age, you have a different type of body. But your sense of I-ness, your sense of identity doesn't change.
Yes.
Your cognitive perceptions, your sense of self doesn't change with the changing material circumstances that you find yourself in. So Vedic astrology is pointed ultimately to realizing, what is that I? What is that I-ness? Who am I? What am I really ultimately? Because it's clear, if we reflect on it a little bit, that most of us will say that we have things that are waiting within us to be discovered. Most of us are walking around feeling that we could do so much more. We could be so much more. We have so much more potential. And yet, how to realize that potential? What is that potential, and how to bring that out? And that's where the charts come in handy. The charts give us a map of that potential. They also give us a map of the obstacles that people will face in realizing that potential. And understanding that, an astrological chart in the hands of somebody who knows how it works, you can work with them to, let's say, find different ways of expressing your nature appropriate to you and in ways that really work. So let me give you an example. We live in a culture where, let's speak in very, very simplistic ways to make a point, right? We live in a culture where everything is about fame and identity and recognition, individuality, being strong, outspoken character, so on and so on. Our media culture gives us that message that, oh, I should be like that. But what if I'm not like that? What if I'm shy? What if I'm a reflective, internal person? What if I don't really care about these things? So if I think that I have to move from being shy to being outspoken and popular and reaching out into the world, I'm going to feel some conflict, right?
Yes.
So in Vedic astrology, the idea is that, well, if we understand ourselves first, then we can accept ourselves for who we are. We can accept ourselves for how we are built, if you will. What is our acquired nature? And then with that, then we can say, okay, now what am I going to do with that? So Vedic astrology is not really about changing us, but it's about understanding us. And it's about giving some guidance for how to express that unique personality out into the world. So that's where the healing takes place. So a lot of times, the healing that's done with Vedic astrology is simply giving an explanation to what people are experiencing. A lot of times I have people tell me, oh, it's been very, very helpful. It's been very, very useful. And it explained what I already knew. Okay. But what it has done in doing that is it's given me permission to be who I am. It's given me, I don't feel the struggle. I don't feel the fight in me as much as I did before, the struggle or the fight with myself. I can accept myself for how I'm made, who I am, how I'm living in the world. And then with that, of course, it takes us further and it actually validates our real strengths. So there are certain characteristics, for instance, certain circumstances rather, that will make very good use of the characteristics of shyness. So, sometimes being like a therapist, you might think, oh, well, therapists should be able to deal with people. But sometimes being a therapist means actually being a little bit shy so that you can be a good listener. Or being shy might be really useful in caring for others.
Yes.
Right? Or it might be really useful in being a researcher. So where you can be really content within yourself and just do your internal work. So let's see, just want to make sure. Sorry, my screen. I lost my I lost my screen there for a minute. So yeah, I mean that's an overview. Maybe you have some questions about that, and go
Yeah.
into it a little bit more.
Can you see a disease? What someone will get in the future, maybe from the physical body?
Vedic astrology has a strong component of prediction. So it's based on the idea that each one of us, we are born and we live different life cycles. So we have different seasons of life, if you will. Just like in nature, spring, summer, autumn, and winter are all distinctly different seasons with distinctly different qualities. And once you get to be a certain age, you can look back on your life and you can go, oh, I could see that season. That was a period that was like themed like that. And here's a period which is themed like this. And what are the themes that are coming in the future? So Vedic astrology gives us information about that. And depending on the nature of the season and depending on the astrological chart itself, we can know, well, what may happen during particular times. I do not personally hold myself out as a medical astrologer. There are astrologers that actually specialize in medical diagnosis or prediction of illness. And in fact, it is traditional in Vedic culture that a physician should also be an astrologer. So the physician should be able to look at your chart and see the underlying natural forces, the underlying archetypal forces that exist within you that may bring about an imbalance in your health. And so then the physician is then able to treat those underlying forces with certain remedies and certain prescriptions. So I only do that in a very general way. Yeah, I don't, and I have somebody that I refer people to who does it in a more specifically medical way. The way that I use astrology is primarily to help people in terms of their personal development.
Yes.
So really, really trying to help people connect with that part of them that I was talking about earlier.
Okay.
Like what kind of work should they be in? How ideally, what is their meaningful purpose in life? And how can they realize that?
Okay. Yeah. From my point of view, this is very much connected with your health. If you are able to develop your personal inner force.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, health is terribly important, and Vedic astrology does cover that. So you can look at a chart and you can see, well, how vital is a person by the way the planets are arranged in their chart. Will they have specific types of natures? So in Ayurvedic medicine, there are different doshas or different temperaments that define a different type of personality. So we have Vata, Pitta, and Kapha body types. So Vata are predominantly air people that are very changeable, slightly nervous, very free-spirited, not necessarily very grounded. They're moving about a great deal. They're highly active, and so on. Pitta types of people are fiery, focused, directed, critical thinkers, analytical thinkers, and so much more. I'm just giving a couple of ideas here. And Kapha people are more stable and grounded, predictable, and if not even a little bit too predictable, let's say. So the charts do give insight into those natures, and understanding what your nature is can, be very useful. In the hands of a good Ayurvedic physician, you can hear about what kinds of foods to eat, what kinds of exercise to do, what kinds of body rhythms to tend to. So, for instance, during the day, Vata people tend to need little naps here and there all the way through the day because their nervous system gets very, very sensitive. Kapha people, it's recommended that you don't have any naps and that you don't need naps. So, there's just many, many ways of looking at it. Health is very important. Ultimately, though, I mean, in the deepest sense, Vedic astrology is much more than just about the body. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what I understand is that you helping people that they can understand their path and get a little more knowledge about their potential.
I think so. I mean, that's the goal of my work.
Yeah.
Yeah. The goal of my work is to give people context. And a lot of times people tell me that, they just meet me. I just have their birth details and I begin to explain to them the kind of life that they've had and the kind of person that they are and their tendencies and so on. And hearing it from an objective source can be a great relief to people.
Yeah.
Right? It can be like, oh, yes, that is who I am. That is how I am. And through that, self-acceptance can come. But then also through that self-acceptance, a deeper awareness of, well, what am I really dealing with? Who am I?
Yeah.
And how can I use it in the best possible way?
Yeah. Isn't it one of the biggest reasons for disease? Isn't it the stress? I mean, when you struggling in life, you fighting, you get sick, and at one point you make an insight, you understand a point, all the stress releases and you get relaxed and can start to understand your inner truth. And I don't know how to explain in English, but it is about understanding, and when you understand, the stress stops.
Yeah, it lessens. I think there are some ways you could interpret a Vedic chart and Vedic philosophy, and you could say, well, ultimately, all disease is rooted in states of mind, states of consciousness.
Yeah.
That is probably too simplistic a statement, in my opinion, because there are biological and environmental factors that contribute to the creation of disease or the manifestation of disease. But in Vedic astrological scripture, it's said that the latency of disease is automatically built into the body. So then that would kind of map rather well to modern genetic understandings that certain genes have built-in triggers to create disease at some point in a person's life. So it's true that may be there biologically. What's even also true, though, is that when we're stressed, when our environment is not conducive for us, then that certainly will bring about the conditions where disease can more easily manifest. And that's why part of Vedic culture is to engage in yoga and meditation, regulated lifestyle, good diet, exercise, and keeping a clear mind. Actually, here's an interesting idea for you, maybe. I think that I tell people that work with me or that take my courses, And I ask them, what's the most important thing that you have? And everybody goes, oh, well, my family or my house, or sometimes they'll say my health or whatever. And I say, well, the most important thing you have is your consciousness.
Yeah.
And so you should, or from a Vedic perspective, one should seek to preserve one's consciousness. One should not just seek to preserve it, but one should seek to purify the mind. So what do I associate with? Right? If I'm associating with bad things, let's say I had a client whose son got what do they call them? A PlayStation, something like that. And he was playing all kinds of really aggressive games on his PlayStation. And it actually completely changed his personality. What was once a very sweet and gentle and respectful young man, in a matter of just a couple of days, became an aggressive, irritated, frustrated, rude person.
Yeah.
So, clearly the answer, the solution was to get rid of the PlayStation. So what we do with our consciousness is actually really important in terms of creating good health.
Absolutely.
You have to protect it.
Okay, I'm very, very fine with your answers, and it was also a good overview about your work with the Vedic astrology, and it is quite a big universe.
Yeah, it is, and I think I pointed in the direction of my work and how it works a little bit. We haven't gotten into a great detail on it. There's so much more that you could say, but at least hopefully your listener will have an idea of the subject matter, where it comes from, how it works a little bit. So we haven't gotten into detail there, and the kind of things that are possible, in working with it, kind of things you can do with it.
Okay.
Good one. Okay.
Budhara, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
And I'm looking forward for the next interview.
Yeah, me too. And I don't know. I guess you'll surprise me again next time. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.